Hello Admirals and welcome back to my channel where I talk to you about all things Battlefleet Gothic, the Space Fleet game based in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. In this video I'm going to talk to you about terrain and its effects on the game itself. I have had another video in the past kind of doing a bit of a general video on terrain, what it is, how to use it, kind of how to generate it on the tabletop, and I'll include that in the description below. But terrain actually has a genuine effect on the game, both tactically and kind of just from an aesthetic point of view as well, obviously. But for tactics, it does have a good impact on the game. So let's get to having a look at what all these actually do on the tabletop. So here you have it, Admirals. Here is a bunch of terrain that we would use in a game of Battlefleet Gothic. We have things like planets, moons, asteroids, warp rifts, and gas clouds, which I use some wool for. I do have some made ones, but for some reason I cannot find them for the life of me. But these are kind of the examples of what we would use on the tabletop as terrain. There are tabletop effects like the sunward edge, radiation, bursts, solar flares, but they're not represented typically on the tabletop like this terrain is. Now, in my previous video, I did talk about how you generate the terrain on a table. So I won't go into it again. You can check that video, like I said before, in there. But we'll start with the first one, the sort of class clouds. I use this cotton wool and wool sort of stuff. Anyone can use it. There's a really great article by in Warp Rift magazine by Double Bass Fanatic, who goes into how he's made his, and they kind of how they're on LEDs and painted up and put on bases and things like that. And I have used some of that guide myself with some of them, but I've misplaced it, like I said, where I can't find them. But I do use this wool. So if we and the benefit is you can mold it as you want on the table, which is great. So gas clouds kind of represent like sort of debris and hydrogen kind of all coming together, and different bits of natural gases coming through on the tabletop themselves. And for all attentive purposes, gas and dust clouds have the same effect as blast markers in all respects. So if you're firing through them, you take a column shift. If you move through them, you you minus 5 centimeters off your movement. It reduces leadership, and it has the same effects as blast markers on ordnance as well, so you would need to roll to see if it gets through. So it's really straightforward. It's kind of just like a giant blast marker essentially that you have on the tabletop. Now critically, it's important that Eldar, if they go through it, because they don't have shields and it acts like a blast marker, they need to take a leadership test to ignore all of those requirements that would usually be affected. And as the Eldar escorts can actually re-roll that result, but they need to take that result as given then. So Eldar do have a chance not to be affected like they are with normal blast markers with glass clouds, but they need to pass that leadership test. So we'll move on to the big one that you're probably going to be using a lot of is asteroids and asteroid fields, which various different missions will tell you how to set them up and things like that. But they do have quite a lot of effects. They're probably the most most rule heavy out of any of the terrain. So first of all, asteroid fields block line of sight. Any torpedoes that try and go through them will explode. So you can't shoot if a ship is here and on the other side, you can't shoot through an asteroid field. They block that line of sight. So that's one critical bit of information, because ships can then try and hide behind asteroid fields as part of the game. Now, you can move through asteroid fields, but if you come into contact with the base or you try and move through it, any ship that does that, or any squadron that does that, needs to pass a leadership test to do that. Escorts can re-roll that leadership test if they fail it, but the second result stands. But essentially, you have to roll a leadership test. Now, if you fail that leadership test, you'll take damage. If you pass it, you can move through the asteroid field as if it's a normal movement, but if you fail it, then you take D6 damage, which is quite big. So you need to you got to be brave if you want to go through an asteroid field. So if you do all ahead full as well through an asteroid field, that is very brave because you need to take the leadership not normally on your 2d6 but a 3d6. So you're being really brave if you're just launching through on all ahead full an asteroid field. So bear that in mind. It's 3d6, not the usual 2 when you're doing an all ahead full order. Now, what happens if you, like I said, if you do fail that and you take that d6 damage? It's literally a straight up roll on capital ships. Shields do protect you against that damage because you are kind of just driving through asteroids, so shields do kind of take that. But you take that d6 damage, so you gotta be careful because a roll of a 6 could cripple a cruiser, a typical cruiser with 8 hit points. Could kill an escort, could kill a light cruiser. So you gotta be really careful with that sort of thing, admirals. Escorts, if you fail it, then you kind of distribute the damage through the escort squadron, essentially, as best you can, really. You kind of gotta be sensible with it, I suppose. Now, important one for Eldar here. Shields protect against the D6, but holofields don't. So bear that in mind if you're an Eldar Admiral with your holo or shadow fields. If you're going through it and you fail your leadership, there's no 2+ save with the holofields. You are taking your d6 damage. So be wary, Eldar Admirals of Asteroids, and trying to pass through them. Hulks. So if you've got a Chaos Hulk or an Orc Hulk, or just a general Hulk on it, if they go into an asteroid field, they die. That's simple as that. They basically become part of the asteroid field. So bear that in mind, Admirals. If you've got a Hulk on the field, you don't want to drift into the asteroid field if you're a Hulk. Now, while I said earlier torpedoes get destroyed if they go into it automatically, an aircraft don't. So if you have attack craft like bombers and fighters, they don't automatically get destroyed. They need to roll a d6, and on a roll of a 6, then they are destroyed. It is very similar to blast markers. But if they pass that, then they can pass through the asteroid field as normal. Now, through this, I've been talking about passing through over to the other side of the asteroid field, but that may not always happen. Sometimes you can go into the asteroid field and stay there. Now, if your ships stay in the asteroid field and they're sitting in the asteroid field, they can't be fired at, so no one can fire them into the asteroid field, but they cannot fire out either. But if 2 opposing ships are in the asteroid field together, then they can fire at each other. But critically, can only be within 10 centimeters of each other. That's a big one. No Nova cannons can be fired. I wouldn't. They'd probably be well within the range anyway, but can't be fired within it. You can't fire the rover cabin out either if you wanted to try and do that. Torpedoes can't be used at all because you are in the asteroid field, so they can't be thrown out. Attack craft can, but they again have to be subject to that D6 rule. So if you threw out the ordnance here, they from this cruiser that has the launch base, then they would still need to take that d6 and a roll of 6. They would be destroyed, but if they pass, then they would be able to attack as usual. So really, I've never had to be perfectly honest, in any of my games ever, 2 ships opposing each other enter the asteroid fields together and had a fight. I've never had that in any of my missions, but I'd be remiss not to tell you can do that. You can follow your enemy into the asteroid field if you so desire. Okay, let's pause on asteroids for a little bit. That's, I think, enough, and let's go on to warp rifts. Now, I use this 3D print warp rift as a template for mine, but you can use other things like a strip of paper, and there are printouts you can get for warp rifts and things like that in the original rules and online in PDF form that you can use. But essentially, they're temporal rifts in space where chaos bleeds out. Now, they do block line of sight. You can't fire through warp rifts, and any torpedoes that come into contact them will be destroyed as well. Hulks that drift into a warp rift, same as asteroids, also are destroyed and lost forever as well. And why is that important is they can't be salvaged or part of the victory points that are in the mission. So bear that in mind, Admirals. And attack craft. Unlike asteroids, attack craft that come into contact with a warp rift also are destroyed as well. Now, certainly a fun rule is that if your ship comes into contact with a warp rift, you need to pass a leadership on 3d6. not the usual 2. But if you do pass it, then you can reposition this ship, because it's entered the warp and it's going somewhere. You can then reposition it 2d6 times 10 away, which I think is kind of nuts, from the rift itself. And you can point it in any direction. So tactically, there's a risk reward here. If you fail, that could be a problem, and I'll come into that in a second. But if you pass it, then suddenly, if you're going this way, suddenly you go in that way. And you could be quite a significant difference away when it's 2d6 times 10. So tactically, from a maneuvering point of view, there are situations where going into the warp anomaly, a rift, could be a really good tactical decision. Now, if you fail that 3d6 leadership test, ship's gone, it's destroyed, it's gone, it's out of the game. Now, if you're playing a campaign, it's important to know you roll a d6, and depending on the result of that, you may get the ship back, or it may be lost to the warp forever. So in campaign, it is quite important. But yeah, if you're going through a warp rift, you got to be really, really brave, because you could lose the ship, or you could tactically be a fantastic admiral maneuvering. So bear that in mind, admirals. Okay, onto planets. Now, you can use these. I use these typically, or you can use a little plastic polystyrene ball, which I've got in the past, or you can use a simple 2D template that you can print off as PDFs. They're all available. Now, importantly for this, when a ship's stem is actually on the planetary template, so I often put a little template underneath these so that it's obvious where the ship is. So if the stem is actually on the planetary template, not just attaching it, but not just base to base, but actually on it, then the template does not block its line of sight or any ships of line of sight to and from it. And if multiple ships are on the planetary template, they can all see each other. So if they're all touching and they're all within on the actual template, then they can all see each other. Otherwise, it's blocking the line of sight essentially. When it comes to ordnance, torpedoes, if they come into contact with the planet, they are destroyed. Basically, you've just gone and bombed a planet essentially, which is a bit mean, but just random drifting torpedoes in the void hitting a planet, bit harsh. But yes, when they come into contact with a planet, they are destroyed. Like the other scenarios, like the other terrain features, if a Hulk drifts into a planet, then that is also destroyed. Poor thing. Poor people on the planet getting hit by massive chunks of Hulk, I suppose. So what's critical with the planets is their size, and that then has an effect on the distance of its gravitational pull and its gravitational well, which has a direct influence on the game itself. So you can have small, medium, or large planets. I typically use these as large planets, and then I've got some smaller polystyrene balls that I use as medium or small if I want to. But the key critical aspect of the game that influences it from a planet's point of view is its gravitational well. So if you have a small planet, its gravitational well is 10 centimeters from its base stroke template. If it's a medium, it's 15, and a large, it's up to 30 centimeters from the template. So what is a small planet? Something like a Mars or a Pluto. I still believe Pluto. Go Pluto is still a planet. Or Mercury, for example. A medium planet is Earth, Venus, and then like a large planet would be something like a Jupiter or a Saturn, right? And that's typically the approach people take on the game. But for this purposes, I'm saying this is large. So its gravitational well is up to 30 centimeters away. What does that actually mean? Well, ships that are within the gravitational well can make additional turns because it's gravity. It's helping it, and it can make a turn up to 45 degrees. Has to be towards the planet, and it can do it at the beginning and end of its turn. So what that means is you can move it towards the planet, move, do another turn, and continue moving, and that would be part of its other movement. And then you could potentially do another turn, because at the end you can do it. So essentially, when you've got planets and to a lesser degree moons, you get essentially 2 free turns towards the planet, which allows you to slingshot yourself around planetary bodies to get a better maneuvering. So you can use planets and moons with their gravitational well to improve the maneuverability of your fleet and to essentially try and slingshot using its gravitational well back into the game and get yourself back. Maybe your enemy has sort of outmaneuvered you and is trying to get in behind you, flank you out, and get into your vulnerable rear arcs. A planet could be a good way to address that issue and get yourself back onto the board and back into the fight. Or even maybe one ship or one squadron needs that additional extra move and turn. That's one way of doing it. So you can get the ship back into the fight essentially by trying to use the planet's gravitational well to slingshot you back around. Now critically, those 2 free moves have to be done at the start of the movement before you even move the ship, and at the end of its movement. So you can't do it in between. It's at the start and at the end. That's it. And one last thing on planets, you can move through them. You can move over them. That's perfectly fine. You can also enter low orbit. That is a completely different video. Low orbit essentially means this ship disappears for a little bit. And that is definitely, I'll have to do a low orbit video, I feel, because that's a totally different, that's a different table altogether. But I will do that at some point. But you can move through a planet, you can move over it. If it's just a template, obviously you can like move on to it, etc., etc. Yeah, you can move through planets. That's perfectly fine. Now, in some instances with planets, you can also get them have ringed planets like Saturn, and in that instance, you would put gas clouds around the actual planet itself. You roll dice to work out the distance and how big the ring actually is. And finally, moons. They act exactly the same way as a small planet would. Essentially, they have the same sort of effects. So their gravitational well is 10 centimeters. So they do exactly the same thing as a planet. You would get your free move at the beginning and at the end of your movement phase towards the moon. But it's only 10 centimeters. So there you have it, Admirals. That's a little bit of an example of what terrain does in the game. Typically, most of the time, you'll be using things like asteroids, planets, and moons. They're the typical and gas clouds. They are the 4 kind of main standard terrain features that you'll get in a game. There are additional fan-made ones like black holes. And I've gone and done a Webway one recently, which will be out in Warprift soon magazine. But so asteroids really probably the most common, along with gas clouds, that you'll come across. Gas clouds act as blast markers. Asteroids act as really impediments to line of sight and ability to be able to potentially do damage if you're brave enough. If you're brave and you lose, it goes through. Really good thing with moons and planets is the gravitational pull, the ability for you to be able to do those additional turns with your ships really will potentially improve your maneuverability. So when you're thinking in your games about that, and there are potential planets there or moons, using that gravitational pull to potentially slingshot around and get yourself in a better position or bring yourself back into the game, always good. So always keep that in mind, Admirals, when you're doing that. And I'd be finally remiss not to show you kind of one of the weirdest bits of terrain pieces I made. I actually made the Fall of Cadia. This is just a polystyrene ball with a Blackstone Fortress stuck in it. But a very popular piece, I have to admit. I probably could do it better nowadays. But, you know, it's a classic piece of terrain that I've used on some of the Chaos stuff that I've done in the past. So I'd be remiss not to show that to you, Admirals, because it is a favourite. I hope you enjoyed the video, Admirals. Please like, subscribe. What are some of the terrain features that you've come up with yourselves? Have you used some of the terrain? What's some of the stories that you've had that have come in? Have you sailed through an asteroid field and exploded a ship like I have in the past? Have you used a planet to great effect? Have you hidden a ship by going into low orbit and then coming out as a surprise? So what's some of the stories you've done, Admirals? But I hope you enjoyed the video. I will do a video on low orbit, and I will do a video on terrain effects like solar flares and radiation burst, etc., that you don't necessarily see on the tabletop. It's not sitting there, but can be quite dangerous. That's for a future video. Hope you enjoyed it, Admirals, and I'll see you again soon.